Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Kim Oliver. I am the second vice chair for Hartford Board of Education. We would like to welcome everyone this evening to our workshop. The agenda has been posted and is also available in board docs. Along with me, superintendent and a number of her staff, as well as my colleagues on the board, Francois Dressel Ledger, as well as Mrs. Shante Brody. With that, we are going to go ahead, as we do not require a quorum to move forward. So with that, I turn it over to Superintendent.
Good evening, Second Vice Chair Oliver. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The topic for today is attendance culture and engagement, ACE. And before we go through the slides, I just, as always, want to do a little context setting, grounding us in our priority, which is priority 2, welcoming culture and climate. And also just to remind ourselves about when we talk about culture and climate, right? School culture meaning how the school, the teachers, when we talk about and staff work together and kind of sets the values, beliefs, and the assumptions that they collectively share about their work, the students, their learning community. And school climate, right, is what draws students and teachers and staff to love the school and make them want to be part of it. And so the climate is this multidimensional aspect of education that greatly impacts student learning, development, and experiences of staff, students, and even our families, right? We're talking about school connectedness, caring adult relationships, having high expectations, safety, respect for everyone in the school community. And so you'll hear through the presentation how our strategy, our work streams, and our actions are more holistic in nature. With regard to this priority, there is one strategic goal under this priority, and that is to develop robust systems and supports to promote student engagement within the school community. And so some of the content that you will hear tonight will sound a little technical, and that's because it is technical when we're talking about some of the systems at the school level and at the district level. And also we'll talk about the supports for our students. There are also 5 specific work streams under this strategic goal, but the most of the focus tonight is going to be on one that calls for the implementation of an integrated system to increase attendance. So quick check-in on our agenda. We're going to review the Department of Student Engagement, which was an expansion that we had this year. The chronic absenteeism, again, reminders as to what that is. I know probably all of us on this call know what it is, but again, we want to make sure that our viewers understand what exactly the definition is. Looking at our major goals, and then a lot of the work that took place during the summer, specifically around medical requirements and clearance for medical for our students, and then residency verifications, which we believe did have an impact on student readiness to begin school on the first day of school. And then look at where we are with our attendance data, and then our quarterly district and school actions as we think about moving forward.
And so, Superintendent, with those sections, let's plan to pause for questions. And so I invite my colleagues at that time just to prepare the questions, and we'll pause after each one of those sections. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'll do a quick overview of some of the celebrations. We want to start with what we know has been working, and we want to celebrate that. So we've had a 17% reduction since the end of last year in terms of chronic absenteeism. Just a quick reminder, we ended the year with a 46% chronic absenteeism last year. And so at the end of October, we were at 29%. The home visits and the Twilight visits, for those of you that might not remember, Twilight was something else that the team implemented, because we wanted to make sure that our school level teams were connecting and outreaching to our families and with our families during non-school hours, right? When it was the best time to connect with families, either in the evenings or over the weekend. One thing that we have found is, right, when the team digs into the data as to the reasons why students are absent, the number one reason for absences of those instances that the teams were able to confirm the reasons why, I believe is about 56% of the reasons were attributed to illness and medical appointments as the top reasons for those. And I know that Chief Avila is going to go a little deeper into the entire list, but it was a learning for us as to the top one. We did have additional investments to support with this work, and that's the addition of the SCSs to schools that had specifically 40% or higher chronic absenteeism rates, and that has supported with the implementation of our one with the monitoring, and also with informing the implementation of the tiered supports that have also, we believe, improved chronic absenteeism. And then, to quantify, there are 1,600 more students that have been re-engaged as a result of the efforts thus far. And before I turn it over to Chief Avila, I'll quickly highlight that the expectation that we have for continuous improvement happens at multiple levels of the organization, and we want to make sure that just as we have implemented and supported schools with their systems, protocols, and procedures, that we also engage in those practices at the central office level. And so our cabinet level continuous improvement cycles are short, high-level cycles that allow our senior leaders from different departments to not only examine data trends, in this case, chronic absenteeism and attendance data, and then, offer feedback to colleagues on the action plans. The cycles can be completed within 2 meetings. And so what normally happens is that in the first meeting, we establish the data overview and then clarify the action plan, while the next time that the team comes together for the second meeting, it is to do some progress monitoring as to implementation updates. And so I don't want to get into the details, but for some of you that were with us when we invested in the DataWise cycles and coaching training, knowing that at the school level, there are data cycles that are implemented, and then we do the same at the central office. And this year we tried really hard to align the cadence and when the data are available, to connect that to the conversations that we have at the cabinet level, and then to inform some of the progress monitoring that happens at the board level. For example, in the teaching and learning committee, or the committee of the wholes, or the workshops where we review the ongoing data and the progress. That was a lot said with regard to what happens at the district level. I am going to now tag in, actually I have one more. If you go to the next slide, just one more, maybe not. I don't know where the slide went around the definition of chronic absenteeism, but Chief Avila, you can pick it. Here it is. Okay. Just a quick glance at chronic absenteeism and the fact that it is defined as students that miss 10% or more of the academic year for any reason. And this includes both the excused and unexcused absences, suspensions, and time missed due to any transitions between schools. And so as a reminder, we have 180 days. And so, right, when you do the math, 18 absences means that a student at the end of the year, right, if a student missed 18 days, they are considered chronically absent. And it is a shifting rolling scale, if you will, that gets calculated throughout the year. And so you have there just a quick visual as to the number of days in which a student will fall off the list, if you will, from being chronically absent as the calendar year progresses. So Chief Avila, I will tag you in, and I know that you have, I believe, Executive Director Barney to chime in as well, given the deep work that she's doing across the schools to support the schools.
Thank you, Dr. Torres Rodriguez, and good evening, everyone. As we go to the next slide, slide 6. So in this year, as Dr. Torres Rodriguez has mentioned, we have a Department of Student Engagement, and the focus of the Department of Student Engagement is really to support the staff to implement to fidelity the priority strategies across the district. And the second piece is to really support students and families with developing a strong sense of belonging in the school and the district as they participate in activities throughout the year. And when we think about a theory of action, is really to support with fidelity the MTSS process, restorative practices, and high leverage interventions where they all come together to increase student attendance and engagement. And student engagement can be seen as a glue that holds together all aspects of student learning and growth. Not only does student engagement make teaching itself more fun, engaging, and rewarding, but it has been shown to have critical impacts on students. When students display high levels of behavioral, emotional, and cognitive engagement, they're more likely to excel academically, form a stronger sense of connection with their school, and have a more positive sense of social emotional well-being. And that is the ultimate goal in the Department of Student Engagement, to support all of the ACE teams, and ACE stands for attendance, culture, and engagement in our schools, to do just that, to bring all of those pieces together to support our students' well-being. And so we have a focus on what we call big rocks, and there are high leverage strategies that we have, and just wanted to review them. And so making sure that attendance is taken daily on time and monitored weekly. We have had some challenges due to the fact that that we've had different people, substitutes, and others that come into our school building and may not necessarily be able to do it in a timely manner. So we have put efforts in to make sure that that happens on a daily basis now, and that phone calls go home to parents by 9:30 when their child is absent. Outreach logs completed by all staff communicating with families with the reason for absence. And so that's really important as we leverage the root causes and try to address any barriers. Focusing on the root causes and the intervention alignment with Tier 2 and Tier 3 students to really make sure that they're getting the support that's necessary and differentiating that support, and having MTSS plans for our Tier 3 students, starting with the chronic overall several years. So we can identify students if they have been chronically absent over years, and we wanted to make sure we prioritize those Tier 3 students first so that we can get them re-engaged, and to make sure that all the medical paperwork is completed and into Power School, so that does not become a barrier for students to come to school. If we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we conducted a lot of work over the summer to really support summer work and to have a good start to the year. And so 90-day summer plans were created back in May. So we were being proactive to make sure that we had a summer plan that was well fleshed out. Home visits to welcome new students, and especially in the key transition grades of K, 6, and 9. And for supports and postcards sent to students who were on Tier 3 at the end of the school year. so that we make sure that they come back excited to participate in school. And we focused on the transition years because that came up in our root causes to really make sure that the transition years was an area where we saw high rates of chronic absenteeism. So to address those areas, primarily we focused on those particular grade levels, even though home visits were done for other grade levels as well. And we also focused that tier 3. And so during the summer, there were many other things that were also done as well. So the implementation of medical form protocol for enrollment in collaboration with health services to provide families with appointments, on-site physicals, and immunizations. So that would no longer be a barrier for them to come to school. First week of school challenge for schools to win a field trip of their choice, so that students are excited about coming to school. Community canvassing in collaboration with the Family and Community Partnership Department, review of data and identification of students who missed the first week of school, so that the first week of school the previous year, so that we were using data from last year to make sure that we conducted family outreach and support. And so this is an example of the impact of the physical and immunization reduction. So last spring, we had over 1,200 students who did not have their physicals and immunization. And due to the summer clinics and the summer outreach, at the end of Q1, we have approximately 124 students who do not have the physical and immunizations. And we are continuing to do outreach to make sure that number gets to 0, and working with the health services department closely to provide the extra clinics and additional appointments and outreach to address that. And that has supported our attendance rates. And then residency checks, we also included during the summer to make sure that, one, that we are checking on students that we needed to check on and to confirm residency, as well as to make sure that on the very first week of school that we were very active, involved, and also conducting residency checks. And then at the end of Q1, you will see the number of residency checks, so that we're actively involved, making sure that our students are continue to remain in our district and that they're showing up and coming to school.
Chief Avila, if you can pause.
Yes.
Maybe this is another definition of, and then if you can pause here for questions after this one.
After this one, okay. So this particular slide, as Dr. Torres Rodriguez spoke in an earlier slide, and she spoke about the days in which change depending on the number of days of school attended. This actually indicates where a child might be based on the number of days that they're absent, which tier they're in. So when I referred to tier 3, I was talking about students who might have, this is at the end of the year, but going back to making sure if they're in a particular tier, in the orange or red tier, that we're making sure that we are focusing on students in tier 3 so they can become tier 2 or tier 1, so that we're making sure they're re-engaged and that they don't become chronically absent.
So we're pausing here for questions. Okay, great.
Yes.
So I also want to welcome board member Walker as well. So just want to check in with my colleagues. Any questions? Okay, Ms. Brody.
Thank you. So we're still on A, right, of ACE?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Brody.
I want to jump ahead.
There's a little data updates coming up, Ms. Brody.
Okay, because not particularly for data, and I hope I'm not in an area that my reception is not good, but for schools on the attendance, are they specific? I heard they can, think of a field trip of their choice, but is there anything, another particular like incentive, because I know of like shout outs, like my daughter's school, it does 8th grade, had the highest attendance, and the principal is encouraging every single weekly call. Like we get a weekly call every Sunday to tell us about the events that happen during the week. And that the recognition is good. I'm just saying, like, is it anything additional? Not that it has to be, but to encourage children to come to school.
So, Ms. Brody, there are 2 levels of incentives. So as you describe, your principal has the school level incentives. And so there are many different types of incentives that the school does on a regular basis to support their particular climate and culture and what works best for them as far as the different incentives. And then there's district incentives that we also have that encourages everyone at the district level. And I'll let Ms. Barney talk about the particular district incentives that we have.
Yes. So the first incentive, which was the back to school incentive, which was the field trip that we are in the process of having schools select, was our beginning of the year incentive. And so then generally we do an incentive each month, sometimes each quarter. Right now, because the other incentive that we were running was the video, visual, and slogan contest, that ran a little over because we worked in collaboration with the Unified Arts team to have students create the slogans and the videos and the images. And our goal was to have a submission from every school. We ended up having to push that a week later. So we are combining the end of October and November incentive and making it a little bit longer. So currently we're doing the Hartford Cup in alignment with the World Cup. We find that sports tend to engage everybody from lower elementary pre-K all the way to high school. We did also combine that with college and career readiness. So we created a calendar that schools could customize that denoted different activities they could do around college and career readiness to connect with the PSATs, but then also around the World Cup. And then schools earn points because, again, we were looking at equity. So we look at population, so they can earn points for reducing their chronic absentee rate, having an ADA that's above our district SMART goal, or having a CA rate, a chronic absentee rate that is at or below our goal. And then they also can win a point for any submission of the events that you were talking about at the school level. So if they send photos of different attendance events that they're doing, different culture and engagement events that they're doing, they get a point for that as well. That's where the schools get very competitive. I received a text message and an email on Saturday night with 54 photos from at least one school, and then they find out about that. So now I'm receiving multiple emails and text messages from schools, and or they're sharing their social media, which is a lot easier for me. And so with that, they will win a school wins a district incentive. So we have things like water bottles that are, we've asked the students what they want. They prefer the metal water bottles. They like it that has a nice label on it with the Hartford Schools emblem. We have drawstring bags. And in addition, schools also do theme. So one of the things that we did as a district is we built out a district calendar. So every school has that. That was a part of the 90-day plans that were Chief Avila mentioned prior to. And then schools created their own calendar, which might have dress down days, pajama days. They had a dance off at one school. They had character days. Some of the high schools use like time for enrichment activities or extra study hall. So the schools vary that. But across our district incentive that we run is generally they pick from a pool. And the one that we will have on November 15th, I want to say I have the date right, is the Board of Ed meeting in person. And that is where we will honor the winners of the video, visual, and slogan contest. And so and they were all student generated and created this year. Last year, there was a winner that was more staff led. But this year, the winning video is by B-STEM. It is great. I cannot wait for everybody to see it. And it was created by the entire school. So we had to have an interesting conversation, Mr. Brooks and I, of how we're going to honor them at the Board of Ed meeting, but then ensure that every student gets honored as well. So I kind of, it had to shift what their prize was and their recognition was, because again, to your point, we want to, Ms. Brody, we want to honor everybody for their good and improved attendance.
Any other questions, Ms. Brody?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just checking in with Mr. Walker and Mrs. Deristel Ledger, whose name I'm chopping up. Oh, there we are. Okay. Mrs. Ledger, I am, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. I have two questions. One question with regards to Power School. When Power School, how often and how frequent is Power School updated if there are errors, you know, with regards to attendance? For example, if a sub is there and they may not take attendance, you know, on time, or if a student comes in late and they were marked absent and that was not updated.
Go ahead, Ms. Barney. I know you're dying to answer that question. I can
Yeah,
see that.
I was
Yeah, I
pointing to
know.
myself.
Go
And nobody
ahead.
could see. So yes, that is a multi-tiered answer. So the first is daily. So each school has a system, to your point, around students that come in tardy, to where that is updated by the end of the day. It can be a student engagement specialist, the family community support partner, office assistant. So ACE team all plays a role in that process. And then everyone goes through attendance daily to ensure that it was entered. So if we have a substitute and they're doing paper attendance, a team member is assigned to, whether it be the office exec, office assistant, student engagement specialist, to enter that attendance by the end of the day. At the end of each week, a report goes out to all principals to go through. It'll have any attendance marks that need to be updated. So if a class didn't have attendance taken because they may have had a sub or there may have been an unusual circumstance, that is denoted. Same thing if there's any irregularities. That also happens daily. That's why we have a cutoff time for attendance to be entered, because then a report is generated to administrators to let them know, you know, of any irregularities in attendance. We also have held several professional learning sessions with staff around the different reports they can use in Power School. So we've gotten really creative with those, and there is a widget in Power School that as soon as anyone logs in, it is a circular bar, lets you know what attendance has been taken. And then when you click on that bar, it breaks it open to each class. And then people can look to see who has been coded. I did see in the chat about bus tardies getting excused. Yes, if transportation is the reason and it's school-based transportation, then that child would be marked tardy and excused. And we did update the coding this year around all of the different reasons for student absence, so that we could have a better understanding and data collection, but also to accurately account for everyone's attendance. And schools have varying systems for you know, students getting off the bus late. Some of the schools have created little cards in the elementary grades where it has like the lunch and what the lunch is for the day. So the students have to select it, and then the cards go down to the office. So that way there's an extra manual check to ensure that all of the attendance is taken.
Just want to check and make sure that Mrs. Deristel Ledger, her question is answered. Yes, her hand is now down. Also want to welcome Dr. Schmerling. I see is now also on the line as well. I don't see a hand from either him or Mr. Walker. I have two quick questions. I know that we want to be able to move forward, but I appreciate this time going through the questions. The first thing is the number of 29% sounds outstanding from last year, 46%. So I want to give my kudos and congratulations to the team for that, because I know especially this early on, it's easy to become chronically absent based on the definition which you showed us. That said, and I don't want us to jinx ourselves, but based on our historical data, do we usually see that number kind of stay in that same area? For example, I know the holiday season usually becomes tougher, and we've talked a lot about that in the past. But for the most part, seeing it at 29%, again, I think that's actually fabulous. I'm feeling good about that. Is that realistic? I guess that's to maybe Superintendent or Chief Avila.
So I mean, I can speak to historical data, and so that you're right that the holidays and the cold, when the winter comes, it becomes harder to do that. I will say though that even in the time when we were in the midst of the pandemic, there were times where we were able to stay steady until a spike of the pandemic. Right. And so, we are very optimistic to say that we intend to stay steady and have put things in place, looking at the historical dates, like where we peak and where we have some challenging moments, so that we can ensure that we continue to stay steady the course. But you're right that typically this comes as we go into the weather becomes colder and inclement weather. It does pose a challenge. And then the traveling, which is one, when we get to that slide, traveling, sometimes some of our students can't get back after they travel for the winter during our winter break sometimes. And we have put some things in place to sort of anticipate that this year in our calendar as well, to try to be proactive, to try to address that.
Thank you for that. And my other quick one, I just want to acknowledge the hard work that's been done around data and data collection and analysis and analytics and all that good stuff, because to know you're using data to identify those tier 3 students and proactively begin to plan around them is fantastic. I think we're don't have the answer to this, but I'm just thinking about those trends based on the historical data that you already spoke of how we can also be proactive. But I'm going to pause that and let you be able to address that as we continue through the presentation. And just doing one additional check. Don't see any other hands, so I think it's okay for us to move forward. So thank you.
Chief Avila, if you can, this is the time to go in the weeds. This is when we want to go in the weeds.
That's so excited with that. Okay. But I do need the PowerPoint back up. Okay. So this actually demonstrates our average daily attendance rate, and the average daily attendance rate is really composed of how the average of everyone in the school coming in, right? And so this is our district level of the attendance rate. And so as you can see that, we've had some dips, but we continue to move back up again as we're going into week 9, and we're at 89.4, which is this, compared to this year, we're at a better place than we were last year. And if we look at our chronic absenteeism rate in September and October, you can see the difference of where we were last year to where we are this year. And again, this goes by tier. So as we, are talking about our tier students, you can see that in tier 1, their average attendance daily rate is 95%. And when we get to tier 2, it drops slightly, 89.9. And then the tier 3 is the 72.7. So as we continue to raise average daily attendance, and that's where some of the incentives come around for the district, is also our district incentives is also supporting and engaging students to be excited about coming to school. That also plays into our average daily attendance, as well as individual growth around attendance for our students. So it does both. And so these are the top 5 reasons for absences as we are looking into data. And I know Dr. Torres Rodriguez already mentioned illness and medical. And as of to date, we have had, I'm just going to give you a number. We have had 470 students already who have had COVID, and 338 staff members. So illness still plays a part, and this is not just COVID related illness. These are all types of illnesses that happens. And I just wanted to lift at this point that also the state has indicated that there's not an opportunity for instruction to happen virtually. So in the past, in the last 2 years previously, when we were in the midst of the heart of COVID, the pandemic, we were allowed to provide instruction virtually. And that was allowed to be considered a present mark if the student participated in virtual learning. As of right now, the state has said we cannot do that. So any child who is out for 5 days, it is a minimum of 5 days. They come back on the 6th day if they feel fine and they feel capable to come back to school. They're automatically out for 5 days absent. And so I just wanted to lift that as well. Medical appointments, parents are indicating that doctor appointments is not always convenient and accessible to be on Saturdays. It's very hard to get a doctor's appointment on a Saturday. It takes weeks, and also after school. So often they have to take a child out of school, and for sometimes it's just easier or difficult for them to then bring the child to school. So then in turn they're out for the whole day. Confirming residency, we've had a lot of transition with students leaving Hartford as well, so that we're making sure that goes back to the residency checks that we spoke about in regard to whether or not a student is in Hartford or if they switch to a different school district, just to confirm that. So that is part of the residency checks. And then out of school suspensions is a reason for absence, not chronic absenteeism. So I want to distinguish that these are reasons for the top 5 reasons for absences, and then out of the country. So if students go out of the country, this has happened definitely during the summer. And as I mentioned earlier, happens during our breaks, not only the winter break, but also happens on the spring break as well, that sometimes it's difficult for our students to return back and there's a delay. And as you can see, there are other reasons that we've lifted. And so we use this data to support our students in eliminating any barriers that we might be able to eliminate. We can go to the next slide. And so this is just our home visit monthly logs, so that you can see the number of home visits. And home visits, I just want to lift also, is not just done just for attendance. It's also done to support relationships with families, right? It's not just done because a child is absent. So there are a variety of reasons that home visits are done. It does increase the relationship piece and increase a sense of belonging when a home visit is made and a parent is engaged or family members engaged around their child. And so you can see that the home visits that are done for Tier 3 students is much greater, because we're being actively pushing to support our Tier 3 students. We support all of our students, but we really want to make sure that we are supporting our neediest students as well. And Tier 3 students are our neediest students at the moment. And you can also see the number of home visits for new students, right? So new to the district, because we want to welcome them into the district as well, to make sure that they have the things that they need to be successful in school. And this is twilight visits. And so just wanted to highlight, I know Dr. Torres Rodriguez spoke about twilight visits. It's in collaboration with the Office of Family and Community Partnerships that twilight visits occur. And they are, if you think about it, a parent or a guardian or a family member may not be home during the day. And you're trying to reach that family member because they may be at work. And so twilight visits happen not during school time. It happens in the evening. It may happen on the weekend. It may happen on a Saturday. And so we try to schedule them so that we've made an appointment with them, so that we're respectful of families. But there are times where if we can't reach the family, we also make the home visit, and we leave a letter or materials to let them know that we're trying to reach out to them. And so this is another form of reaching out. And this is the amount of home visits twilight visits that were done during July and August, as the efforts that I mentioned around during the summer. And then they will continue also to conduct twilight visits. DCF referrals, in our attendance manual, at some point after a number of engagements and reaching out when necessary, we do reach out to DCF when we feel that there is a need to do that, when we've exhausted all of the possibilities and we feel that it meets the requirement for educational neglect, though we don't determine that, but we do call into DCF. We had a meeting this year with members from the DCF team and the team that is responding to the calls, to really highlight that sometimes some of our calls will not be taken. And so we unpacked that. And since then, we have had a higher rate of our calls being accepted. And so you can see the number of DCF calls that have happened and that have been conducted. And then YSB referrals, when you think about the YSB referrals, YSB is an opportunity. The Youth Bureau stands for Youth Service Bureau, and it is an agency operated directly by one or more sorry, I can't speak today, municipalities that has a broader scale of services that most other youth servicing agencies, in addition to providing direct services like other agencies. And YSBs have a responsibility to assess the needs of the youth, and then they identify gaps in service and coordinate service for youth to fill the gaps and avoid duplication of services. In addition, they really support families and students in grades 6 to 12. One of the two important things that should be noted is that the student and the family, the guardian, must agree to the agency involvement and must sign off in order to get the services. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Oliver. And this is the reduction of no-shows. And so every year we do have a number of students who don't show up in the beginning of the school year. And one of the things that we are actively involved in as soon as possible is to reduce that number, making sure that we conduct outreach to our families to make sure that they no longer are no-shows and that they actually come into our school. And at this point, we are at a number of 76 students that are considered no-shows, and there are some students in India at this point, and that we know, some of them are in India. About 18 of them are in the process of residency checks that we're just trying to confirm and waiting for the results. And a residency check, just so that I can lift that as well, doesn't happen just with one-time visit. A residency check may take 3 or 4 or number of visits, and even to the point where if we were told that a student is attending another district, we need to confirm that. So it is an intense process when we conduct a residency check. And then there are cases of some students who there's a few that are refusal to come to school, and some students are working, and there are also some severe mental health situations. And there is at least one student who has family members have indicated has run away from home. So there are a variety of reasons of why we still have the 76 no-shows, but we do have a pulse on many of those students on why they have not attended school.
Chief Avila, can we pause here just because
Yes.
there were several data slides, but one thing that I want you to clarify is there is a set of guidance and expectations from the State Department of Education with regard to students that are no-shows and truancy and all of that. And what exactly happens when in the middle of a process you do make contact with a student and the student, the family says, yep, we're going to be there on Monday morning, and then the student doesn't show up? Does the process begin again from the first step of meeting with the family and then doing a home visit?
So Dr. Torres Rodriguez, are you asking me if we go back to step 1?
do you go back to step one? Yes.
No, because step one, if we've already had contact. Step one is the very first step is to outreach and make a phone call to parents. So we don't go back to step one. We actually pick up at different points on whatever the need is. So if we've already made contact and that student is supposed to show up, we probably would do a home visit in the situation that you decided, as opposed to a phone call, so that we could find out what has happened and why the student hasn't come in. It really depends on the relationship and the other information, the context of the situation. And in some cases, first a phone call, then a home visit might occur, but it really depends on the context.
So are we pausing again for questions, Superintendent?
Yeah, in case there were, clarifications with regard to there were like, I think 5 or 6 data slides, so I didn't want to.
Yes, thank you. And I do see some hands up. First, I saw Mrs. Darristel Ledger.
Thank you so much. With regards to the residency checks, the residency visits, now, how is that actually coded or tracked? And, what actually counts? So if a staff member goes to a residence and no one is there and they leave a card, does that count? Does it count if they call and leave a message, or does it actually count, or is it coded as an attempt, or does it count when they actually make contact with a family member?
So a residency check is done by, we have trained residency coordinators that have been trained on how to conduct a residency check. Staff members, teachers do not do residency checks. They could do home visits, but they don't do a residency check. So residency check requires that there's a verification that the person lives at that particular address, or may have moved, but still lives in Hartford. So there's a number of steps they have to take depending. So yes, they would have to make actual contact with the parent. If they're told, if they visit a particular home and they're told, oh, that person doesn't live there, they still have to verify that that person doesn't live there. And that sometimes they say, oh, they moved to a different district. So then there's times where they actually go to visit the other district or make a phone call to the other district to try to get verification if that student attends that other district. So it's different than a home visit. A home visit, yes, so we might leave a card and we just say, just checking in, we'll come back. But we're confident that that person lives there. If we made a number of home visits and we didn't get a response, then we might go to residency check then. If we mail a letter and we've made phone calls and we really don't know, then we would go into a residency check. There are things that databases that they also can check as well to confirm the residency of that particular family.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see also a hand from Mrs. Brody.
Thank you. Can you, given, it was mentioned earlier, first question, can you give an example of a non-attendance home visit?
A non-attended home visit?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that means, Ms. Brody. You mean
so
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
So it was said like what warrants one of the things warrants a home visit is attendance. Is it any other reason that
yes,
home visit would be warranted that wasn't attendance?
Yes. So sometimes it's welcoming a family to the new district. Sometimes it may be a difficulty with maybe not having a uniform. Sometimes we know that there might be the opportunity for the family members to have a conversation with a staff member and isn't necessarily would prefer to do it at home in conversation. So those are other reasons that happen. There might be a reason just to say, we need technology and I can't make it there and I want to pick, I need a replacement device. And so there's been cases where that has happened if there's a barrier of why the parent, I'm working and I can't make it to the school. So if there's any particular barriers, there's might be to drop off homework, right? In the sense of my child has COVID. I know they may be absent, but I still want to make sure that they're doing the work. And so I prefer to have hard copies of the work. And so that's another reason why they may go out and conduct a home visit. So it's not always for attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just checking for other hands. Mr. Walker, I do not see anything. Dr. Schmerling, I do not see anything. I do have a quick question myself. I keep telling them quick. Hopefully they're quick. Speaking to the home visits, the team that goes out for a home visit, do they have information on the reason that the student has been absent, as you, Chief Avila, had pointed out, like the list of reasons?
So they do have all the reasons and all the data. We share that. If you're asking, do they have the particular reason for that particular individual? Sometimes yes, right? So they have access to the logs that we have, and that's one of the key places that we have that information, so that they have that information to know why there has been. But there's also times we go on a home visit because we don't know. And so sometimes if that's the reason why they're going to the home visit, is because we really don't know why they're out, and that might be a reason why they're going. But often it could be that it's a secondary student who might be struggling, and the parents are like, I can't get them to come to school. So maybe like, just having that conversation, knowing that they're having, parent is having trouble getting them to school, and having that conversation with the SES that goes out, or if they have a relationship with the FCSSP, which is, if whoever they have the best relationship is the person that should go out, to really try to say, so what's standing in the way for you coming to school? We miss you. We really want you to come. We really want you to come back and be engaged in school. So yes and no to answer your question.
Thank you. Also, just as part of, different question, still home visits.
Mm-hmm.
Please remind me, we talked about community partners, in particular, like our community-based organizations might be the community school lead organization or the partner. Are they also participating in home visits? Or
yes.
They're going to? Okay.
Yes, they are participating in home visits as well.
That's great. Thank you. I see another hand from Mrs. Daracel Ledger.
Thank you so much. I have a question. And it has to do with, and I'm not going to say like a specific parent or a specific family, but a situation. Say if there's a situation where there's a student who had been bullied or who had been physically assaulted by another student, and that student is now afraid to come to school. Mm-hmm. And now there's absence with regards to that. How is that handled? And does that end up, becoming a chronically absent student? How do you handle something like that?
So, one of the things that we do, we do an investigation on bullying. So if there's any allegation around bullying, whether it's from the student or the family, we conduct a bullying investigation and share those results with not only the student, but also with the family members to review that. And there are times where we need to develop a safety plan. And so that we develop a safety plan, and we also use our restorative measures to repair the harm, so that the student knows that the other individual takes responsibility for their action and actually puts things in place to prevent that. So that is one of the things that we do to try to rectify and to really alleviate any fear about coming to school. There are times that other measures in the schools that's taken in the event that whether schedule change or class change, or if those things that are also needed depending on the circumstances also occurs. And then there's check-ins, so that the individual checks in with an adult to make sure that everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen, and also for them to feel safe and have a caring adult to go to speak to make sure that they also feel safe as well.
Chief Avila, I just want to also further clarify if I heard Ms. Daracel Ledger, were you wondering if the student, because the student is afraid and is not coming to school, does that count against the student in terms of unexcused absences? Were you wondering about that, or were you just wondering about the safety aspect of it?
Both, but yes, specifically with regards to, is it held against that student who does not feel safe being in the building?
Once the safety plan is developed, right, the expectation would be for the student to come to school. And so I think there is a time in which, if all of the concerns have been addressed, then the student is expected to come to school. And if they don't come to school, right, then they would be marked, right, unexcused absent.
Thank you.
Okay. I still do not see any other hands, so we should continue.
Okay. If we could go to the next slide. So I am now going to turn this over to Ms. Barney so that she can talk about the Q1 actions that the ACE teams are conducting.
So yes, we are fast approaching the end of Q1, which is Friday. And so these are all action items that are currently in place. And then we will move to what we are going to be doing in Q2. So we provided professional learning to all staff in connection to Power School. There are a multitude of reports that can be utilized through Power School, knowing the varying ranges of our staff and their tech skills, as well as connecting to our priority standard and then our big rocks, like what reports are the most important. So we pulled those out, aligned them to our strategic plan and our actions, and then presented those. So we've narrowed it down. We even created a one-pager for everyone to use that's easy access around the 6 key reports connected to taking attendance, looking at outreach logs, coding attendance correctly, understanding who is absent and their reason why, as well as MTSS plans, which was our big goal. And we are getting very close to having 100% of students that were Tier 3 last school year and are Tier 3 this year, having a attendance MTSS plan entered into Power School and being monitored for 4 to 6 weeks with interventions aligned to the root cause. The other item that we did address was updating the letters. So we are currently finishing that, and that should be updated to go out in Power School starting next week. But one thing that we noticed this year was that we have been trying to frame things in the prevention manner. But the letters that we thought were worded in a very positive way, we're not necessarily coming across that way with our families. And part of that was being that we really do know reasons for absence now because of all the hard work that we have done around outreach logs, coding attendance, family outreach. So when the letter was going out, we may have already known the reason for absence. So parents were getting the letter and then calling the school saying, but you know why my child was out. So we've really gone back and reworded the letters so that we can name, yes, we may know why you are out. However, here's where you are. Here's how many days you have before you're chronically absent. And then we've connected it to academics. So, with your child being out this many days, this is what they're missing, so please continue to outreach and work with schools. And we've also pushed that out through Power School and Parent Square. So it's now automated and also can be translated. So that is one of the things that we're very thrilled about. But in addition, it also feeds back to Power School now. So it's taken some of the legwork out of people's, off people's plates per se, because before they would have to create the letter, personalize the letter, address the letter, send it, and then document it in Power School. Now it's one felt swoop. They create the letter that's personalized with the template, send it in Parent Square, and then it feeds back to Power School.
Miss Barney, can I just add something? I think my favorite part of the letters is the fact that it asks the parent, it asks the family members, what else can we do? Like, so it's a supportive letter. In addition to letting them know the impact of attendance, we're also reaching out to say, please let us know how we can help you. Like, reach out back to us to let us know what we can do to support you, because we know it's something is happening that is causing this barrier. We don't say it that way, but we definitely say, please let us know how we can help. And I think that is an important piece, and that is partly one of the reasons, even though Ms. Barney mentioned the other reasons, but we needed to include that so that we are taking a supportive stance in helping our families with the barriers that might exist.
Yep. And so in connections that we spent a lot of time working on, not just systems of, collecting attendance, but also around, what does it look like at each level? What do we do with that data going forward? And then how do we use that data to craft intervention plans that have a clear knowledge of this child's root cause, but then a high leverage intervention. So in the past, we were finding that, it was a one size fits all. So Johnny might be absent because of illness and Kiara might be absent because of transportation, and they're all getting a sticker chart versus, transportation is Kiara's issue. What about transportation is the issue? Is it something we can solve at the district level with providing transportation? Is it something that is at the home level? Do we need to get a community partner involved and putting that as a part of the intervention plan versus Johnny, who might be out because of illness, and his intervention might be, can he use the in-school health clinic, when he's ill to set up appointments? Can we get doctor's notes? Are we seeing a pattern of when he's absent that might, be tied to a health ailment that might require a 504. So we really spent a lot of time working on that. And then the other big push this quarter was the no-show protocol. And so I know Chief Avila and Dr. Torres Rodriguez did speak to that around the work of what is the expectation of the schools? What does the outreach look like? And unfortunately, yes, we do have the 76 students who are still no-shows, but we know every reason, as was stated before, for their absence. And we are actively and proactively working to get them into the appropriate setting and or back into and re-engaged in their current setting. And so thinking about quarter two, because that starts on Monday, where are we going? And so we're going to continue, and we're not forgetting about the practices that we have in place, but we're building off of them. So strategically, we are looking at our comprehensive high schools because they do have higher chronic absentee rates. And we find that we found that in prior review of like reasons for absence and conversations, that some of it can be around disengagement. So two things that we are going to be doing is we're going to be working with Hanover, the Hanover group, to do focus groups with our students that are chronically absent at the comprehensive high schools. But we're also going to interview the student engagement specialists, staff that work with the students, so that we can really dive in and see what might be some additional root causes that we have not lifted, as well as what might be some strategies that we have not tackled that we can then implement once we get all of that data. Connected to that, we are going to be rolling out, and we're in the process right now of pressure testing it, a disengagement protocol. So we participate in Talk Tuesdays with the State Department, which is around attendance and chronic absenteeism. And so various different districts present. One district presented around a disengagement protocol that they utilized, especially at the high school level. And so we went and observed the protocol, have taken it back, kind of made it our own. And two schools right now are trying it out. So as a part of the protocol, you do it during the home visiting piece. And you do it with students who have an identified root cause of disengagement. You do it with the student and with the family so that you're getting data from both ends, and then can work with different community partners. You can work with social work, you can work with academics to develop a clear plan to re-engage the child. So we're hoping to roll that out whole district by the end of this quarter, because we're in the process of ensuring that we have all of our steps correct and accurate. We are also going to be, we have mentoring currently happening and occurring, but we want to strengthen the mentoring. We want to build it out. We want to utilize our community partners. And so we are in the process of looking at mentoring across the district, but then specifically with the comprehensive high schools, as well as our Hope 1, Hope 2, and New Visions. And how can we leverage the community partners to strategically select mentors to support our students who are chronically absent. We are also going to be continuing with the tier 3 plans for MTSS, but we're going to be updating them based off of the data. So we're going to be reviewing the students that have a current plan, looking at their data, looking at the intervention, is it working? If it's not working, what are we going to implement next? But then we are also looking at our bucket of tier 2. So our students that are on the cusp, we say, like anywhere between 5 and 9 absences. Were they chronically absent last year? They will be going into and having an MTSS plan, because I don't remember who brought it up earlier, but that preventative piece and looking at, okay, we're holding steady here, but how do we prevent those kiddos that might fall into the chronic absentee bucket by the end of the year? How do we keep them from getting there? So that's going to be our next focus with schools. We're also utilizing the consultancy protocol during our district ACE team time to bring case studies and create specific action plans. So currently right now, we started last week with HMTCA and Weaver. We will be finishing that this week, and we will have an action plan to go forward to specifically present to the school ACE team and then help them implement that at that level. We also are in the process of building out the data dashboard using Decision Ed. And so it's gone to the district ACE team once for pressure testing. They are going to do updates, and then it'll be rolled out to all administrators. And the beauty of this is that instead of having to go through all of the outreach logs or using the tiered roster report in PowerSchool, they will have a graphic of their entire school and all of the reasons for absence. And so then we can go school by school and then really dive in and look at the data and know what is the key reason for absence, what are all of the reasons for absence, in a very easy platform. So that is very exciting. And then the other update, which we realized was a barrier. So when we problem solve for things, sometimes we create our own barriers. So with the new coding system, it required teachers to go in and enter the reason for absence in a comment box. So, but that does not feed to the family outreach log. So teachers and any staff who is receiving a phone call for a child, for a tardy, for an absence, they have to enter it in 2 places. And so what happens? Human error. Some people are entering it in one spot, not entering it in the other. And or we were creating something that was more time consuming. So we've problem solved, and the comment box will now feed to the outreach box. So it will only need to be entered in one spot, which then will make it, will streamline the data collection process. And then the big one that we are working on right now is, so the state legislation says that there is no virtual learning. However, there can be dual instruction for students with identified disabilities. So anyone with a 504 or an IEP. We do know through our new system and looking at our reasons for absence that mental health has come up, and that there are students that are disengaged because of anxiety, depression, fear, and they do have medical diagnosis. So we are working right now in developing a protocol, utilizing the state guidance that will go to cabinet for further discussion, so that we can problem solve for students around that option.
So, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go to the next slide.
Chief Avila, can I just clarify? I know Executive
Sure.
Director Barney talked about the students with the IEP. Just want to clarify that the planning and placement team and or the 504 team, right, have to have some level of agreement for that level of learning or that type of virtual learning to be part of the plan before it can happen. I just want to clarify that not all special education students that have an IEP or 504 can have access. It has to be part of their plan.
Right. And it also has to be considered that it's beneficial for that particular individual and that it will work, right? There are some circumstances where it may not necessarily work for that individual. And so we just want to celebrate all of the hard work that all of our staff members have been engaged in. And, you know, it takes a village and has truly been a collaborative effort to get to where we are today. And so schools are re-engaged on average 30 students who were identified as tier 3 the very first week of school. And that really was all of the hard work that happened in the summer and the outreach and the postcards and all of the other things that have happened. Sand School in particular started a walking school bus, and so did McDonough. I know that McDonough's not listed here, but they also started a walking school bus. And a walking school bus is a really organized way of a group of students walking together because they may have some fears about the way they come to school and some barriers in regard to the neighborhood in which they come to school. So this was a way to have a stronger sense of community as well as get students to school so that they're excited about, they talk on the way to school, and they no longer dissipates the fear about walking to school. ELAMS, Breakthrough South, Hartford Pre-K Magnet, because we want to make sure our younger ones also really begin to identify the importance of coming to school. So we're starting at the pre-K level. Neil and Rizzulli have no students with 18 absences already. So they will, at this point, you know, there are students so that there's no need to recover. So that's a huge piece that at this point, there are no students who are 18. 80% of our schools have finalized their tier 3 MTSS plans, and all 11 student engagement specialists vacancies have been filled. And that was a struggle last year. I just want to say that we had student engagement specialists and then some left for other positions. And we also couldn't fill all of our student engagement specialists, which left a gap at school to really support schools in the way that that they needed to be supported. So I'm so excited about that as well. And so that also includes the fact that we have offered comprehensive high schools have a student engagement specialist per grade to really develop those relationships. That didn't happen last year. So that's another intervention that we put into the comprehensive high schools so that we can strengthen attendance in the particular schools. And 100% of our schools have a tier 1 incentive calendar. And that goes back to what happens at the school level for different type of incentives. And there's one that's not on here that I'm going to let Ms. Barney share that happened at Talk Tuesdays at the state level. You have to share that, Ms. Barney.
Yeah, I guess I'm very excited about it. So we were recognized today at Talk Tuesday for having the second largest decrease in the chronic absentee rate in the state of Connecticut. There's only one district ahead of us. They wouldn't tell us the name as of yet, but we had the second largest decrease. And the reason that it was such a major shout out at the state today is that the meeting was focusing around how the chronic absentee rate in the state of Connecticut is just continuously rising each month, and that most schools have seen an increase from September to October, whereas we have decreased. And most schools have had an increase from last year to this school year, and we have had a decrease. So that was very exciting news to hear today, and I was very excited about it.
So we'll stop here for any other questions.
Okay,
I think that I'm glad you called that out. That is a terrific accomplishment and great recognition. Congratulations.
yes, that I completely agree. So Dr. Schmerling, while you're on, did you have any other questions or comments?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, just to make sure you're all set. Good
Yeah,
to
thank
see you,
you.
especially given with everything going on with RSV,
Yeah,
our new
yeah.
fancy way of
It's been
saying
busy.
it. So, I do see a hand by Ms. Brody, and also welcome others to begin putting up their hands if they also have questions. So Ms. Brody, you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to share a personal experience. I truly appreciate my daughter's school. She wants to go to school every day. Like, I don't know. I thought seventh grade would have been like the worst year, being that I've been in a classroom with seventh graders, but it's something about a school environment that's magical. I've always stated that it could be one of the most magical places. It changed lives, right? So I know we haven't, I don't, I'm gonna say, I know I haven't heard it as of late, but I know we used to say that every student should have a one caring adult that they could, you know, call on, or, you know, go to it, that's identified in the school, a staff member. And I can honestly say my daughter has many. I appreciate that. So I'm assuming that it's part of the Montessori way, but I know the district and what, you know, you're stressing and you're implementing and you're having building leaders practice that is at least happening. At least personally, I do see it happening. She'll always say, Miss Heather, she gets me. Like, she always said that. And that's all she has to say. I understand it. So Miss Heather can read her, and she's not with, you know, Miss Heather this year, but she knows how to find her and she can ask for special time with her. So that is very important to young people with what they're going through in this world. Is social media, is so many things, but knowing you not only have one caring adult in your school, that you have multiple people you can put in. You can say, I want to have lunch with my teacher from last year. That means a lot, and they understand that. So I appreciate that, like, so much with my child, and I know other families appreciate that too. So what is one of those things that we talk about here, but then when you actually know is happening in the school because your child is experiencing it, it really comes full circle, and it really makes a difference. So I want to definitely shout out Annie Fisher Montessori on this evening.
Thank you for that, for sharing that.
That's great news. I also just want to check in with our other colleagues, Mrs. Darcel Ledger, and also, okay, she have put her hands up. There we go.
Thank you so much. And yes, shout out to Annie Fisher Montessori. I just had to put that out there as well. Okay, so my question, or I wanted to share something, and I also have a question. Are you familiar with My Brother's Keeper Alliance? And the reason that I'm asking this is because in the school district where I work and where my son goes to, he was invited to be part of this. And it's a mentoring initiative. And there's My Brother's Keeper, there's My Sister's Keeper, and I wasn't very familiar with it. But the thing is, it incorporates, it includes the educators that are, you know, that are working with the students already, and it creates this bond, if you will, and this opportunity for students to kind of open up and to see each other on a different level. And my son was, you know, once again, he was invited to, you know, be part of this. And, you know, there was an opportunity for him to go to Pennsylvania with, you know, a group of other students. And there were students, he's in middle school, he's in the 8th grade. So he went with, there were high school students who went as well. And it was, you know, it was like a retreat almost. And these students were able to, you know, journal and talk and have a campfire and have, you know, whether it was meditating, and I don't know exactly what, but I do know that it was really awesome. And they were able to talk about, folks who, loved ones that they lost in the past, and, who they miss, who they're, what they might be, struggling with, things like that. And it was one night, but it was really amazing. And he really was excited about it. And he was able to go to this, event. And he had, there was an administrator that he had previously when he was in elementary school. And now, now that he's in middle school, he's, he has another administrator. But it was really a bonding and an amazing event that and they continue to do things. They meet and they talk, and they check in with one another. So I'm wondering if that's a possibility for Hartford Public Schools to look into.
We can look into that. I see that, Ms. Oliver, you referenced MBK, and it was, I mean, even several years pre-pandemic, if I recall, and it was through the mayor's office specifically for broader, not just Hartford Public Schools, but youth across the city. So we can check in again. I think Hartford was was it the first kind of wave of cities that implemented MBK quite some time ago now, right? Yeah, I can certainly look into it.
Yeah, I was going to say that is correct. Sometimes I have to cheat and bring in my City of Hartford knowledge. But yes, under initially Mayor Segarra, and it continued under Mayor Bronin. So, and there was a mentoring component, but I agree, great opportunity. Ms. Darcel Ledger, I think great opportunity to reconnect and re-engage there. Any other questions? I want to check in with Mr. Walker just to make sure he's all set.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm good. I've appreciated what I'm hearing. Since we've been lifting up my brother's keeper, I would ask whether the district is doing similar engagement with groups like the Legacy Foundation, which seemingly had a similar kind of model of bringing Black men and professionals, and maybe even others to engage Black boys, and I think focus towards middle school. And so I guess I would lift that up as another group to lift up and investigate within the Hartford area.
We can certainly connect with Chief Blackburk on that, Mr. Walker. I know that I believe at one point they were at MLK, if I remember, and this is also pre-pandemic.
I think you're right. And yeah, I'm questioning because I'm wondering if they've expanded beyond Hartford, and whether they should be pulled back in now that we've gotten in post-pandemic and we can do more face-to-face activities.
Okay, so I think others, I do have a quick point of clarification, and then I hope this is a quick question. And this is to Mrs. Barney, talked about the disengagement protocol. And I love the fact, just also again, kudos superintendent, you and your team, us learning from other districts was working and us looking to implement and replicate. And I think that's fantastic. One of the things, and Ms. Barney, though, that you said was you're hoping to have it in by the end of this quarter. And then you also mentioned the end of the quarter is like this week, and Monday is the next quarter. So I was just like, oh, does she really mean it's going to happen by this Friday? Okay. I see. Okay.
Yes. So no, that would be the end of quarter two.
Okay.
So that's our quarter two goal, is to have the disengagement protocol rolled out. So We started it this quarter and we're pressure testing it, but we're hoping to provide the professional learning to the administrators, the student engagement specialists, anyone that's going to be a home visitor around that by the end of this quarter.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And I just was like, wow, that's really fast. So I just wanted to check in with that. The other thing, and I hope this is quick too, a student engagement specialist, and I guess it could also be the other acronym that I can never remember is SPP or something. But our folks who are at our schools working with our students and our families, do they know who the tier 3 students are? And perhaps this is an easy yes. Okay, everybody's shaking their head. That's awesome. So when a student's engaging with them, they immediately know they're tier 3, and that is fantastic. So, okay, thank you. As superintendent has clarified, FCSSP, which for some reason is not sticking to the brain.
So, Ms. Oliver, we do a little chant, FCSSP, just so that if that helps you. But to add to what you're saying, they also run groups with tier 3 students. So the SESs also run groups with tier 3 students as well.
Okay, that is even better. Thank you. All right, I see Ms. Brody put her hand up. So I'll give the floor to her.
I had a question just along the lines of, I believe it's called the ALICE training that teachers went through, because we got quite a bit of, well, I don't know if everyone did, but, and excuse me if it was mentioned, but the reaction from staff on that, and that was some of the words that just they used to describe was traumatizing. There was definitely a 911 call that was referenced in the training that was pretty I got a ton of emails, and I'm quite sure I think everyone else did too, and people who reached out to me personally around that training. I don't know if is there any comments, any feedback that was given as a result of that.
And I apologize, and perhaps it could be to the superintendent. What exactly is the ALICE training?
This is the active shooter and crisis training.
Oh, okay.
That is actually a 2-part training, and the first part was delivered, and there I believe we had 3 staff members that did specific outreach to us. It sounds like there were others that reached out that might not be aware of, with regard to how some expressed that they felt traumatizing, that it was a traumatizing content, and that the word trauma informed was used by one of the presenters from law enforcement. And there is, Chief Avila, did the district safety team send the letter out? I think there was going to be
there will be a letter out this week. It has not sent it out yet, but will be a letter out this week to further talk and make reference to the ALICE training as a follow-up.
So what I'll do is ask that we do that follow-up also to the board, please, because this is a workshop and we have a set agenda per state law. So we just need to be careful about us going into that topic. But I do think it's important per Mrs. Brody request. And then if we could get that as an update across board members, that would be fantastic.
We will share the response with the board. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm not seeing anyone else, and it is almost time. Anywho, I just want to again thank everyone for it was a very robust conversation. I see the superintendent. Yes, superintendent. Yeah, go ahead.
I do. I just want to acknowledge again the team. I know you've said that, and several others have said that. Chief Avila, Executive Director Barney, all of the ACE teams, our family and community engagement team, because this is really hard work. Chronic absenteeism is not linear, it's nuanced, and there's a lot of technical work that goes into it. And we know that there's a framework that's codified, right? It's positive engagement with families and students and staff. It's actionable data. It's capacity building. And we have to look at the framework and then apply it to context, our local context, our citywide context, right? And the fact that we do serve communities that are, have been historically under-resourced and need a lot of supports. And it is not lost on me that it's not just the work that's been done this year and last year, but I also want to, acknowledge that as a board, you all made investments when we went, and committed to the equity-centered budget that specifically invested in schools that had higher percentage of chronic absenteeism. At that point, I think they were like 20 to 25% chronic absenteeism rates, right? And the SESs were the result of that initial investment. Here we are 3.5 years forward with a truly codified, cohered approach to the work. And at the center of that, SESs, family and community support providers, knowing where they fall into that system, and then the data pieces. And so I just wanted to highlight that, yes, the internal team, but there's a resource allocation and a commitment that was started a few years ago by the board. And so I wanted to acknowledge that it's been a whole system approach to addressing chronic absenteeism and getting our students right in school so that they can have, increased outcomes. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Superintendent. Didn't mean to cut you off. I should have given you the floor last. But exactly what you said. This tonight was a great presentation, and of course, I'm sure we'll make the PowerPoint available to board members, but also to the public on Board Docs. We always welcome you to go to Board Docs to make sure you're getting the information that's available there. So have a wonderful evening, everyone. Great presentation, and I wish you the best until we speak again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.